Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session, Career Advancement Panel. The Student Success Center is collaborating with the Alumni Association to put this event on for you. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a great discussion. I have great panelists, awesome panelists, waiting to talk and share some experiences. And hopefully that will bring up some discussion at the end. I'd like for us to wait to ask the panelists questions until later. And in the beginning, I'll be the one talking and I'll be the one asking questions, okay? So we'll wait for question and answer at the end. I'm Giselle Oliveira. I will be your facilitator this evening. I'm so excited to be here with you. It's great to see that people are interested in our events and interested about career advancement. I'm the Associate Director at the Student Success Center, and under my portfolio, I have career and employment. It's something I'm very passionate about, and especially educating and helping students transition into that first professional job. Having said that, we're going to get things started. And the people on the hot seat are our panelists. Yay! So, we're going to start with Gia. Gia, can you introduce yourself and also if you could share a little bit about your career trajectory?
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. So my name is Gia. My journey started in Cuba, 2006, when I graduated from my first bachelor degree in microbiology. Then I got a job in a National Institute for Agricultural Sciences. And 4 years after I graduated for my first master's degree, and I also won on a scholarship to come to Canada. This is why I'm here. So I arrived to McMaster in 2011. I did a second master's degree in molecular biology at Dr. Finance Lab. And after 3 years doing the master and also working for him, I decided to go outside the box, the university, and find a job. So my first job was at a company, a chemical company. I was the manager of R&D, microbiology R&D manager. And there I was responsible for all the testing, the microbiological testing in-house and external testing. I spent there 5 years. And after 5 years, I decided that I wanted to change to a different company. And right now I am working for J&J, Johnson & Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working in R&D, same R&D, but I'm now more into pharmaceuticals and also quality. I'm more related to product release and new basically over-the-counter medications. So that's my journey. In combined, they're like probably more than 12 years of steady working.
But a great trajectory so far, and some really good companies you've worked with. That's great. So Jeff, do you want to do the same for us, please? Can you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your career trajectory?
Sure. So my name's Jeff Tam. I went to McMaster from 2009 to 2013. I graduated with a degree in biology. And after that, I went to the University of Toronto and did my graduate degree in Master's in Biotechnology. So I graduated from that in 2015. As part of my master's, I participated in an internship at a pharmaceutical company, GlaxoSmithKline, so British pharmaceutical company, and I was an intern in the marketing department. So that's where my career started. I spent about 1.5 years doing marketing for specialty care and oncology prescription medicines. And after that, I actually made the move into pharmaceutical sales in Southwest Ontario. So it was definitely an interesting experience. Having grown up in Hong Kong, I was not very familiar with really any parts of Ontario other than Toronto and maybe Mississauga. So I spent almost 3 years in pharmaceutical sales in areas like Sarnia, Chatham, London, Windsor. And after 3 years in sales, I decided I wanted to move back into marketing at GSK, and I moved into digital marketing. Did that for about a year and a half. And then most recently, I moved to a Danish pharmaceutical company called Leo Pharma, where I currently work. And I am their multi-channel marketing lead, which is a really fancy buzzwordy way of just saying I basically manage all of their digital marketing.
Great. So did you live in all of those regions, or?
I was based out of London when I was in sales, but I definitely traveled a lot, at least by car in those days, yeah.
Your favorite place in Canada is?
Toronto.
Toronto.
I'm
I
a
was
city kind of
expecting
guy,
that.
yeah.
Caitlin, can you do the same for us? Just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your career.
Sure, yeah. Hi, my name is Caitlin. I went to McMaster and graduated in 2012 from the Software Engineering and Game Design program. After I graduated, my first job was in Toronto at a little mobile game studio called Yukon Games. And I was hired as a developer, a programmer there. I did that for about 3 years. And after that, I transitioned into a production position as a producer. So essentially like a project manager, but with creative control, I guess is the easiest way I can explain it. And I stayed for another almost 3 years at Yukon as a producer. After that, I wanted to give a shot at the AAA video game industry. So I joined Ubisoft Toronto, also in production. I was there for nearly 2 years, and I was working on the Far Cry 6 project. Then after that, in this past March, I joined a little indie studio called Drinkbox. And we're currently working on an unannounced project, which is really cool. But yeah, I joined Drinkbox right as everything went into lockdown, so it's been really interesting. There's a few coworkers that I've never met in person. Yeah. I've only been to the office once, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, that's kind of my trajectory.
Yeah. And onboarding on a virtual world is very interesting, right? And training.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for starting us off and sharing your trajectory and your career story. We're going to start with the fire round because I really, really enjoy the fire round. I think the energy just pumps up when we do these fire rounds during our virtual event. And it's very quick questions. And all I'm waiting for is for you to answer with a yes or no. Okay. So if you could all just say yes or no, and then we'll move on. And then I'll get into questions. And after that, we'll do the question and answer with our audience. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. It's never too late to make a career change. Yes or no?
Never.
Yes.
Never too late.
Yes, it's never too late.
Yes.
Too late.
So there's no confusion.
Ever. Failure can be a key to self-discovery. Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Did you guys already fail?
Oof, many times.
It got pretty bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty bad. Don't leave a job until you have another job.
No.
Maybe.
Maybe. Maybe. Why maybe, Jeff?
It depends.
It
So that's
depends.
that. Yeah. Usually I would say no, but there could be unique scenarios, perhaps.
Okay. Give at least 2 weeks notice when resigning.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. And LinkedIn is a must for professionals.
No.
No.
Depends on industry. Yes for me.
Yes for your industry. Caitlin and Gia, you guys said no. Why?
No, not really.
No? It didn't help you?
It is nice to have it if you're gonna use it. and you're going to use it properly. And if you use it professionally only and nothing else. And for me, I don't really use it,
Okay.
but I have it.
Okay.
That's why I say it's not a most. It's a nice thing to have. If you want it, have it, but use it properly.
Caitlin, anything to add to that?
I really only use it as like a living resume. I have never been contacted through it for job opportunities. I've never made a connection through there that has been beneficial to my career, but it has been helpful to just have like a living resume that's easy to update. And they have a handy thing where you can export it in a resume format now. So it's very
Don't
nice.
you love LinkedIn?
I didn't know that.
Right? I like what Gia said as well, that if you have it, you need to use it. And if you use it correctly, then you reap the benefit of that, right? But having it just for the sake of having it, I agree. Yeah, it might not be the best thing, but as a living resume is great. Okay, so fire round is done. That wasn't too hard. That was great. Right? I didn't see anyone break out a sweat. No, everyone survived it. Good.
All good.
All good. All good. We're moving on. Questions. Okay, what surprises and unexpected events stand out most for you in your career journey? And I'm looking for anyone to answer that.
I guess I could start. For me, it was realizing that I was enjoying doing things that were more adjacent to what I had studied than actually doing the thing I had studied. So I studied software engineering and I started out as a programmer. But as I was doing it, I was realizing that I was enjoying planning out how I was going to do the programming for whatever task I was given, way more than actually sitting down and writing the code, which led me to discover, oh, there's this whole world of production where I can help plan these things out and help people figure out how to make the things that they want to make and kind of bring it all together. So I guess I just never even realized that that could be a possibility when I was in school. Like it just kind of felt like, all right, I'm going to get this degree. I'm going to be a software engineer. The end kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But yeah, it was kind of cool to realize that, you know, I can still use what I studied for sure. Like I have a unique ability where when I'm working with programmers, for example, it's easy to talk to them because I know what they're talking about. Like there's not a lot of like translation that's needed, I guess.
Right.
So I kind of have an advantage there because of what I studied, but I don't use it every day, but like I use it alongside what I do every day.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Any of you, have you overcome any obstacles in your career so far?
I could maybe share one. So sort of surprises / obstacles in my career. So the first one was, I mentioned at one point I transitioned from pharmaceutical marketing into sales. And the surprise, not that I wanted the surprise, was that I was not as good at sales as I thought I'd be. And definitely, you know, wasn't bad at it, but definitely not great either. And so for me, my time in sales was really important to understand the business and learn how the business worked and build off of that skill set to take it into where I think I'm much stronger, which is in marketing. So I think the learning from that was, you know, it was an opportunity to identify my strengths and needs and move on to where I'm strongest. But I think, you know, sometimes it's okay not to be good at every position you've been in, even though they may add value to your career. And then the second, maybe more unexpected part was that I never expected to, I guess, work in the digital marketing, sort of multi-channel marketing space in pharma when I first started my career. I wasn't even aware of it, but fortunate for me, I somehow stumbled into it. And now it's one of the, you know, sort of fastest growing areas in the industry. There's a couple of departments which are growing really quickly, with digital being one of them. So I think keeping an eye on industry trends could, you know, open opportunities for your career if you can pick up on them quick enough.
That's great. That's great advice. Do you want to
Yeah.
add anything here to that?
I was gonna share just my biggest roadblock that I call it in my career was learning English. So I study everything in Spanish from the beginning to the end. I did a master's degree in Spanish, and I had suddenly had to move to Canada and learn a new language from zero and do a second master degree on that language and TA on that language too. And anyhow, it was the biggest learning journey that I had in my life. And usually when you learn another language, you need time, and if you're younger, even better, but I wasn't that. So I had to do it together with the work in the lab, with my master's and everything going on. And it was challenging, but it pushed me to the I would say the highest limit that I could go. So that was for me the biggest one.
That's great. And it's true, when we are in a career or doing a job, I should say, there are things we like, there are things we don't like, and it's equally important to know both, right? To know what you're good at and you like to do, as well as what you're not good at and you don't like to do. And pushing ourselves out of the comfort zone, the best way to grow, right? The best
For
way
sure.
to grow. Jeff, you addressed being uncertain about career direction in your article. What helped you discover your career interests? And do you have any advice for others who are dealing with career uncertainty?
So maybe I'll address the question in two parts. I was uncertain in certain parts of my career, but in hindsight, I think the major part of it, and I will admit I still fall victim to it every now and then, is that I was scared. Sometimes when perhaps you have a certain idea of how quickly your career will go, and when in 1 year I'll do this, and then in 2 years I'll do that, and then this will happen, and it doesn't go to that plan, you might start second guessing yourself or looking for other opportunities in the industry, where I think, if I was to be honest, it was just, I wasn't giving myself enough time to do some of those things, or I wasn't patient enough. So there needs to be a fine balance between risk and reward and being realistic sometimes. But I think, perhaps in the first even 10 years of your career, you can probably afford to take more risks. And it could turn out really well for you versus, perhaps later in your career, you might be a bit more risk averse. But then in order to really discover your interests in an industry, my best recommendation will be to meet with people internally. So, we talk a lot about networking externally. I'm actually perhaps a bigger believer in networking internally and understanding, what does everyone in each different department do, and how do their objectives ladder up to the objective of the overall organization. And, when you get an understanding of that, again, one, you might identify opportunities of where certain departments are growing in importance. So for example, in pharma, drug pricing is a pretty hot topic in the public domain as well. And obviously internally, market access and drug pricing is a very important department for us. And then secondly, it'll identify perhaps your interests as well, not just learning that and perhaps that will help your career, but also it will identify where you might want to move towards and understand what are the skill sets you need to build if you want to move in a certain direction.
It's very important, and networking internally also gives you a better perspective of the business you're in, right? You find out more information, not just what you're working on, and you find out
Absolutely.
what your business is all about. Great point. Thank you so much for sharing that. Gia, you mentioned in your Life After Mac story that you did an intense 8-month job search when you first graduated. What strategies did you use to keep a positive attitude, and how did you remain persistent, and how did you how did that lead you to land a job?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my mom say I am very persistent. I don't know if that is true, but I think, yeah, she say it all the time, and I think I am. Basically, I got organized. When I have a goal, I have a plan. If I don't have a plan, I'm not gonna achieve the goal. So I got organized. I got my schedule. I was waking up early. I was doing my search. I was in my computer like if I had a job, basically. I was not waking up at 11 or 12 and doing, parties. No, I had a job that was finding a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also recommend to find your the model that works for you. What is best for you? What is working for you? And for me, basically, was trying new things. Was talking to people, everybody, not only people that was in my industry, but also I got help from everybody. I was talking to everybody to see different perspectives, different things that could work. And I basically prepare my plan. Like I was looking at, I was searching the companies that I wanted to apply for. I was not just applying to any job that I was finding available on the web. I was doing my search, and when I was applying to a job, it's because I really wanted that job. And I was caring already for that job, even though I didn't have it. And that actually was what it landed my first job, because I contacted the company directly because the link, it wasn't working anymore for people to apply to the job. And I just let them know, hey, by the way, your link, if you do want applicants to apply to this job, the link is not working anymore. And then they messaged me back and they say, but do you want to apply? And I said, sure, yes, I do. I do want to apply. And so, anyhow, I got the job. And they basically put the link down after 24 hours because they got 100 applicants. But I was the only one to say, hey guys, the link is not working. I didn't apply. I didn't send my resume. I just say, hey, this is not working for you. So, and it was the way that I made them easy for them to kind of spot somebody, because I show up. I did something different that nobody did. And that's what it landed my first job. And the second thing that is very important too, and we're gonna talk about it later, is interviews. Like when I go to interviews, I do really prepare myself for those. So don't think that you have an interview and you're gonna get the job. No, you have to prepare yourself and you have to do your homework. So basically, yeah, just get organized, get your goal, get your plan, what you want, and just do it. Go for it.
Yeah, and it's great that you called the company's attention about the link. So it wasn't about you. It was more about helping the company. And that's what got them to ask you to apply for the position if you were interested. Very interesting. Yeah. I love that. I love that story. So everyone talks about, and you mentioned this, Gia, about networking. Like in your story, you networked with people, you talk to people. I think all of us have done that. And we hear often networking is very important. Does it really work? And how has it helped in your career this far? Especially now that things are online, like how does this networking, how is this going to help you, right? And I'm opening it to anyone.
I feel like I'm gonna just say it quickly. I think it does work, and you have to basically open yourself to other people, like really listen to other people. And from every job, and Jeff says something very interesting, like from every department, from everywhere, listen to people. They do have things to teach you, and you can use them for your own benefit. Yeah.
Anyone want to add anything?
Sure. Sorry. I'm lucky because the Toronto game industry is really small. So networking typically looks like becoming friends with people. So I'm finding a lot of the time, like just being friendly and actually like making outside of work friends with the people who I work with has been like, it feels weird to say this, but it's been beneficial. A lot of the times that I've been told that there is a job opening has been because I've been friends with somebody who's at another studio and has said, hey, like, this sounds like something you might like, you should apply. And I've also gotten like really good tips about like, this studio is really good to work at, this one's terrible, don't go there. Like, that's been really beneficial. And yeah, I've gone to like some more like traditional networking events, and I've never found them particularly useful. Maybe it's just the industry, but they've just always felt very forced. Like handing the business card and like giving your own elevator pitch and that kind of thing. It's never been super helpful within the game industry. I can definitely see it in other industries like that require a more like professional kind of environment being more useful. But yeah, for me, just like being open to making friends with the people I work with has been the best way to network.
Internally networking, right?
Exactly.
And
yes.
I think that Jeff mentioned that earlier on.
Yeah.
Jeff, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with what Caitlin mentioned in terms of, just being friends with a lot of people in the industry. I mean, pharma's might be a big industry, but it's also a really small industry. I like to think it's kind of like the NBA, where every year different players go to different teams and everyone goes everywhere. So it's important to be, to know a lot of people, and you'll know where there might be a drug launch coming up. And that means they need marketers and they need salespeople and they need all these other people. And then internally networking, I'll give an example one time of when I was looking for a position of how it helped me, because I think probably, a significant number of the conversations about my career have been had in a room without me in the room. It's probably between my managers and our senior leadership talking about who they think is a good person to take a certain position. So I think networking internally, first of all, it lets people know about your career interests. And there's been countless times where I've told a manager about my career interests, and you have to be strategic. You don't want to share with everybody, perhaps. But they told me, oh, I really never knew you were into something like that. Well, did you see the posting that came up last week? Those are really important conversations. And what happens is over time, you build advocates for you when you're not in the room. And also one past example is, I really wanted this position. So not only did I have managers who were aware of my interests and were advocates for me, but by networking with people who were already on a certain project for a brand, I started helping them out on those projects. And when it came time to interview, I had also even connected with other people on the team and read all of the strategies and all of the slide decks. So I was ready to go. And a lot of the people on the team mentioned that I felt like I was part of the team already. So that's how I sort of got my chess pieces in place before I even, joined the board, so to say.
So start delving into other projects if you're interested in those areas within your organization. I love that.
Absolutely.
What makes a great leader in the workplace? Jeff, you smiled.
Sure, I can go first. So I've had the privilege of working for many great leaders in the workplace, and I think something that they've all had in common is that they are able to create an environment where people are comfortable to be vulnerable and transparent, and whether that means sharing a failure or sharing concerns, because you don't want your team to be hiding those things from you. Some of the greatest leaders I've worked with were also able to make me personally invested in their vision and their projects. So I didn't want to do the work for them just because they were my boss. I did it because they cared about it, and because they cared about it, I cared about it. So those are two things I've noticed in really great leaders. They can bring people along with them.
Gia, what does it look like for you?
For me, I found communication style is so critical. Like, and how a person, a leader communicates, it tells a lot about the principles of that person, the values that has, and how they treat people. So if you see somebody giving commands and orders and just telling people what to do, that's not a really leader. Somebody more like a mentor, like somebody that is able to guide you to be there when you need them, that is someone that you're gonna look more up as an example of a leader, a good leader. Also, for me also, I think leading by example, like if you want your team to accomplish something, you have to be invested and you have to show that you're also looking for that same thing, that you're asking your team to do it. So yeah, be transparent, be honest, be nice. Don't treat people like they like they're just machines. So yeah, that's about.
Caitlin, what about you?
Yeah, I pretty much the same things. I always think about like remembering that the people that you're leading are human. Like you said, Gia, like they're not machines. And I think that's especially like prominent in games where there's kind of a crunch culture and a lot of studios where it's like, oh, everybody's passionate, so they're willing to stay and work more, even though we're not compensating them anything, blah, 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 blah. But the best leaders that I ever worked with were the people who are like, you know, would push back against that kind of thinking. And like they were, you know, if you say I'm tired or I don't feel well or, you know, something weird's happening in my life, they were compassionate about it. And, you know, they were there to make sure that you were still successful no matter what was going on. And yeah, also the ability to like have tough conversations with you and not be wishy-washy about it. I mean, being on the other end of that conversation always sucks, but like if they're saying something like, well, you're not doing so great, but it'll get better and I'm sure it'll be fine, but make sure you're doing, like, just kind of like not being solid on what's going on is like, leaders can't really help people get past whatever is difficult if they're not, you know, firm on what the issue is and confident in what they're saying, but and also being able to like remind you that they're there to help you succeed. Like they want their whole team to succeed and you're part of the team, and so, you know, let's work on this together kind of thing. So that's another thing that's been important for me, is like being able to get tough feedback, but from somebody who's confident in what they're saying.
Right, and who's going to help you and support you in that journey to get better, right?
Exactly, and
or
not just
anything.
Yeah, not just saying like, oh, you're really bad at XYZ, figure it out, and you know, just kind of, yeah, exactly, like being able to help you find a solution.
Great, thank you. And what was the adjustment like for you guys when you transitioned into a leadership role? What was that transition like?
I guess for me, it was definitely scary at first. I've never had people reporting to me directly, but because I'm essentially a project manager, like I'm figuring out what they're going to do, and like they don't have to answer to me, but I'm still like giving them all of their work and such. So yeah, I was really nervous about like you know, not overdoing it or not underdoing it, and, you know, striking the right balance and all that kind of stuff. But eventually it felt kind of natural to me. Like I realized this is a better spot for me in my career to be in this sort of position. And yeah, even when I like go to a new studio or even just switch to a new team or something, like there's still that part of me that's like, oh, I gotta kind of feel this out and figure out what everybody needs. But yeah, it's always a little scary at first, but it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also that the unknown, right? You don't know what's going to be like, what you have to do. So yeah. Gia and Jeff, how do you get past that? How do you get past that in that transition, that scary moment that you think about, okay, so now I'm taking a step upwards, but what does that mean? And how do I do that? And I don't want to fail.
I agree. It was scary. It
What
was
strategies did
scary,
you use?
and it was more difficult than what I thought. I thought I was gonna be a manager, and that's it, and nobody was gonna question me. But I was being questioned by my direct reporters and also my managers. So at the same time, I was in the middle, and they were asking things, and here we're asking other things. So I was like, oh, going crazy. So I think what it helped me the most, honestly, I took courses. I went to communication courses. I went to leadership courses, and McMaster University has awesome courses about it. So I basically got help from people that know better how to be in these positions, and how to talk to your employees, and how to get them to work in the projects that you really need them to advance. Um, I realized something else, that because because you care about a project doesn't mean that your employees do. So if you really want to get things done, you have to be there with them, and you need to understand from where they're coming from and what they need, so that they get the motivation to work in what you need them to work. So it was a whole cycle of motivation thing, and I basically found that courses do help in how you communicate, how your style is, and how you manage those conflicts, because you're gonna get conflicts too between different employees that they don't talk to each other, and you have to deal with that too. So anyhow, I had everything like that at work, and it was yeah, it was interesting. It's cool. Good learning.
It's great because you learn as you go along too, right? With every
Yes.
experience.
Yes, that's right.
Jeff, what about you?
Yeah.
What did that transition look like?
I was just going to say, I think part of the transition to becoming a leader is a lot of times what gets you to becoming a leader is you're very good at your individual contributions as an employee. But when you become a leader and you start leading a team, it's not so much about what you can do, it's about what you can get your team to do for you. So it's, otherwise you're micromanaging. So every time I was leading a team, it was about setting the direction of where we're going, understanding how does everyone play a role in that. And then for me, it was about getting things out of their way, So in my previous company, there could be challenges with bureaucracy, sort of politics and meetings that involved office politics or funding and identifying funding for projects. So I told my team, you worry about getting that done. I will go have the political conversations and I will find the funding, and I try to cut the tape out of their way so they can do it. That was for me a big part of being a leader. So they felt confident in executing. And then the only other thing I'll add is that, I don't think you necessarily also need direct reports to be a leader. A lot of times, especially in marketing, in pharma, and Caitlin will know in project management as well, is you're leading a cross-functional team. So these people don't report into you, but you're expected to lead them. And that's where, a skill set that I think a lot of pharma companies hire for in marketers is the ability to influence without authority. That's a really important skill. And I think, sometimes I'm probably a little bit biased, but the sales experience helps.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Competition is fierce in today's market. How can candidates stand out when applying and interviewing for positions? And especially now that everything is, I keep coming back to this, but everything is virtual now. How do we do that?
Well, in my industry, pretty much in like any kind of software thing, not even just games, having a portfolio is critical. It's like, we're going to look at your resume, but one of the first things we're going to check is like somewhere at the top, do you have a link where I can see like actual work you've done in the past? Like, even if it's just school projects, like that's great. but we just want to be able to see like right away what you've done, what you have done as like a passion project. You know, what does your code look like? Even like if we're able to see a glimpse of what your code looks like, that's super, super helpful. Or like, it's just like if you're an artist, like you got to have that portfolio to show like what your skills are and you know what your focus is and what your talent is really lying in. And even if you're like a producer like I am, you can still have a great portfolio of like things you've worked on. Talk about like the exact teams that you worked with and what you helped them through and all those kinds of things. But yeah, like that portfolio is critical.
Good. What about your industry, Gia? How can someone stand out and make themselves the preferred candidate?
Yeah, you definitely need to have a clear resume. Like a portfolio helps for sure. I don't have it. I never had it. Because I guess it wasn't in my, I don't know, I didn't need it. But you need a good resume. If you think that your resume is not good enough and you're not getting the calls that you're expecting, get help. Again, talk to people, get help, get people to read it to help you out. Resumes have to be clear, to the point, concise, no mistakes, and just you need to really put that picture of who you are. And I don't have a portfolio, but I always send like a letter, like a cover letter, that who I am, and that's a more personal touch. That's no I have 2 master's degrees and I have blah blah blah. No, it's that who I am, what I like to do, what I am good at, and I'm gonna be good at it, and I put examples of how I am good at that. So they get that personal touch from me. That is not just a resume, it's just something else that person is telling you who you are. For big companies, it's hard to send that cover letter because usually what they do, it's like you send the resumes to a system and then you get like a matching words between the job position and your resume. And again, there is even more important to be clear. You have to match the words from your resume to the words of the job position when they make sense, so that they are in alignment, so that system can pick your resume up from 1,000 of them. And if you're lucky that you're in that pool, then is that opportunity that you have to be more personal. Okay, I'm gonna send a communication, I'm gonna send a letter. So I always like to have that touch, that personal touch. And if you're lucky enough to, and you're gonna be lucky to get that interview and land it, you have to get prepared to that. Even for a phone interview, people sometimes make the mistake to don't get prepared for a phone interview, and phone interviews are interviews. So you have to be prepared. You have to do your homework. Just don't wait for that phone call without even looking at the job posting again and really studying that. So get your homework, do your search, and be prepared for that interview. And be yourself and make that connection, that personal connection between that person and that is talking to you on the phone and Zoom or whatever, in person, and you. And I want to tell you yet the last thing, the job that I have right now, I got it because of the interview. So I went to the same company, Johnson & Johnson. I applied for another job. I went for an interview for that job. I did not get that job, but I made such a good connection with the person that was interviewing me that she called me a week after and she said, you know what, I really have this job posting. Could you please apply? Is another job, and that's how I got the job that I have right now. So because that interview. But again, be prepared, and don't just take it for granted. You don't have the job yet. Just try to be yourself and the best that you could be.
That's great. Jeff, can you comment on an online world? How do you do that? How do you kind of interview and make a good impression?
So maybe I'll just add a quick tip to and build off what Guia was mentioning with resumes. Sometimes I've noticed in past job applications where there's only a spot for me to upload a resume. And so what I do is I copy and paste my cover letter into my resume Word doc, and then I save it as a PDF and I upload the entire thing. So it's a 2-page resume plus my 1-page cover letter and into my application.
Great tip.
And the other thing that maybe sometimes I try to, again, to improve on my luck maybe with that application is I see who I know in that company and I ask them for referral if they're comfortable with it. So instead of applying through the regular method, I have someone, I've had people hand my resume directly to the hiring manager and say, hey, I've worked with Jeff. I think he could be really good for this position. I think you should interview him. And sometimes that's worked out great and sometimes it hasn't, but I feel that it is a better opportunity. And then maybe going back to your question, Gisela, during the interview, I like to, I guess my approach is I like to show up in a way that it feels like I'm ready to start the job, and what helps with that is if you did have an internal referral, having a conversation with your friend who works at the company to try and understand why are they hiring for this position? What are some of the challenges right now in the company? What is the manager like? What are they looking for in a candidate? And how can you adjust your skill set to solve for those problems? So when I'm having the conversation with the hiring manager, it sounds like I've been part of the conversation for hiring for this position since the beginning. And I have an onboarding plan of what I believe I should be doing in the first 3 months in the job that will, set myself up and set them up for success. So they look good having picked to hired me. And it also, but in a nutshell, it all comes back to, being in a position where it feels like you're good to go.
That's great advice. So really prepare for the interview, but also have that plan in place for that 3 months and be able to answer any of those questions. That's great. I really like that. So I know that we are at 6:46 and I have a couple of other questions that I want to ask, but I'd like to also open it up to our audience. If you have any questions, please use your Q&A to ask the questions. I am monitoring it and I will bring up your question, and our panelists will be more than happy to answer those. But until I see any questions, I'm going to continue. What advice would you give yourself when you were in your early career? I love that question, like thinking back.
So maybe if I was to be able to give some advice to myself when I first started my first job is that it's not enough just to be really good at your job. I probably was a little bit more stubborn and arrogant when I was a little bit younger. And I thought that if I'm just really, really good at my job, they can't deny me. Like, what are you going to do? I'm going to get the next job. And no, people will prefer to work with someone they like more than someone who might just be a little bit better than you. So I need to build on my communication skills. I need to show that I can be a good leader, that I can be empathetic, and that I can also, perhaps more importantly, adjust my communication style depending on who I'm talking to, because some people are more analytical, some people love talking about their weekend, and some people like to get straight to business. So being able to flex and adjust and be a good leader and be well connected and have what sometimes companies call organizational savvy is, I find, even more important than some of the more technical skills that will get you at the next job.
Great.
That is so true. I love it.
Anything?
I will add 2 quickly things that they don't need explanation. Get more sleep and do more exercise. I would do that.
Those are good.
That's awesome. I like that. We do have a question. Alex is asking, how should I approach salary negotiations after completing my master's degree and going back into the workplace? Gia, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So personally, so there are 2 different things. One is when you are in your company and you want a promotion. That's a different setup than going into a new job and they're asking you how much you need. And that happened to me when I transitioned to this new job. So I had a manager position where I was. And at J&J, I wanted to keep my salary, my income to per se, right? So you used to have an income and you want to keep that or even go a little bit more. But so for that one, I did have to really have that talk. First of all, don't be ashamed to have that talk. It's a money talk, but you need to have it. But two, do your own research, do your own homework again, and be clear on what you really want to ask. Sorry, that's my puppy making some noise there. Sorry.
Oh.
So yeah, so I had to know what I was willing to sacrifice, willing to get up just because I wanted a job. But I also had a limit. That's my limit, and I know going under that because whatever, I mean, that's my living expenses. So don't be so greedy about it. So have a limit that you need to really get. And after that, everything after that is a bonus that you get, right? So I did my sacrifices just to get the job that I wanted. And but I think it was worth it at the end because I feel much better than before. So it's not all about money. And don't work just because you want a promotion and you want to get a salary increment. That doesn't work. It doesn't look good on you. So anyhow, that was my experience. I did sacrifice probably a promotion and my old job and everything just to move into the company that I wanted to work for.
That's great advice. Caitlin, Jeff, do you have anything else to add to that?
I think, like, I don't have the master's experience there, but something that's been really helpful is just Googling the title and salary, like the word salary. There's a lot of websites that try their best to put together salary ranges for job titles. Sometimes it can be difficult because a lot of them will do it in US dollars. So it can definitely be tricky, but it's been really helpful to kind of set my own expectations or just like get a range in my head of like, okay, in general, within the industry, this is kind of what people are willing to pay. And then from there, I can kind of think, okay, well, I've been doing this for X number of years and I've got this type of experience. So I feel like, I should kind of land in this section. One thing that I do wish that I did when I first started negotiating salary stuff was ask for a little higher than what I was hoping for. Because I asked once and got exactly what I asked for. And I was like, maybe they would have gone higher because they didn't even I don't know, budge at all. But it wasn't a bad salary or anything. It was just kind of like that realization, like, oh, it's okay to ask for this kind of thing and try just a little higher and see what they say. So yeah, Google and go just a little higher, see what happens.
Jeff, you left that it's sales 101, right? Ask for higher.
Yeah, I would say it's helpful, definitely. But Caitlin's strategy is really great, right? Because I think a lot of employers expect you to negotiate. You're really leaving money on the table if you don't. So I personally like to give a range, and that's based on my understanding of what the industry looks like and what the company's hiring practices are, and also where I feel that, like she said, my skill set falls there. And I've negotiated both with internal promotions and external. For me, it's just, I want to make sure I get what I think is fair compensation for the job that I will be doing. And it's got nothing to do with the job I'm coming from. It's about what I will be contributing in my new job. The only thing I'll maybe add is that it's not just about the base compensation. I think as everyone progresses in their career into more senior positions, more and more things become up for negotiation. So at a very basic level, you know, things like vacation days, benefits matching, potentially stock options, a company car, signing bonus, bonus targets for the year. Those are all negotiable. Company phone plan. So even though the company might not budge on one or two things, maybe they will somewhere else, and you can still get something that you're looking for.
It's so true. It becomes more important, especially the vacation days, right?
I realize
Yes.
I'm sounding like I'm grabbing everything I can when I negotiate, but you know, just trying to get what I like.
Kim is asking a question. Have any of you had to overcome this dilemma? You want to advance into management, but all the roles you apply to want applicants with previous management experience. How have you gotten the experience to be considered eligible for the management role you want?
I think this is kind of a common mindset, especially for women. Just apply, honestly, like just apply, and you never know, because you know, the other things on your resume may be able to speak to you having like the related skills. And even within your resume, you can add information like, of course, now I can't think of a good example, but like if you did something very particular in a job and you think, oh, I could kind of like relate this to being in management, add like an extra sentence or something in there that just says like, which could apply or which applies, like, you know, just be really specific. Also, when I was trying to transition, I asked my manager for work that would be related to this kind of thing. So in addition to my regular work, he was also giving me tasks like helping him plan out our next 2 weeks of work, or like helping him fill out some grant applications, like things that I would need to do in that anyway. But, you know, it was kind of like training in a way where I was helping out with that in addition to what my current job title was. And also read some books on it, take a class if you can. There's a lot of really good books on management, and there's a lot of really good books on management for particular industries as well. So yeah, if you have a library card, I recommend checking out some management books.
Mm-hmm.
And also to add to that, because you made a good point there. Sometimes even having the experience of management, it doesn't really guarantee you that you're gonna get the job that you want as a manager in another company. And that happened to me. Like, I have 5 years of experience as a manager, and when I applied to J&J, I didn't get the manager role that I wanted. I got second one that was also a leadership role, but it didn't really matter whether I was a manager or not. They look at you as a whole, like what they want and what they need in that role, right? So sometimes even you won't have any experience, and if you fit that position, they will consider that. So anyhow, yeah, take courses. That's a very good point too. Take courses and get that, at least that knowledge that you will need.
And I love what you guys said. It's apply for it. If you're in doubt, apply for it. What's the worst that can happen? You're going to say no, but you move on and you apply for the next one, right?
Definitely.
It's great. And it's something that's very hard sometimes, is to take that no, but you know what? You're going to hear more no's than yeses, but that persistence kind of comes back to that persistence and knowing what you want and going for it. Another thing that I want to, like, job descriptions. We see these job descriptions everywhere. We read these job descriptions. Some of them have everything, including the kitchen sink. But then when you when you start doing the job, it's a lot different. Have you had that experience in your career so far?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Even when I was applying to co-op jobs while I was at McMaster, like the co-op postings some companies would put on would say like, oh, we want somebody with 5 years experience. And it's like, oh, who are you targeting this to? Like, we're co-op students. We haven't graduated yet. And like, it's very confusing, but I mean, I still applied to them and I ended up getting one. So, you know, I try to think of it as like a wish list almost, not a requirements list. When you look at a job posting, I know a lot of them will still divide up the job posting into like requirements, nice to haves, or some other kind of thing. But really, they're just trying to find somebody who they believe can get the work done and is pleasant to work with. And you know, you never know. Like you might just really fit the bill in a different way and get that job. So just go for it.
Great.
Yeah, I'll just add that, you know, no one needs to know how many jobs you haven't gotten. So,
That's
you know,
right.
on my resume, it looks like a perfectly logical transition. But, you know, I've probably missed over, you know, 100 positions I've applied for, but no one needs to know that. And, you know, and you know, and when you're interviewing for a job, you're starting fresh. So it doesn't hurt to apply for more jobs. And every now and then, you know, I will throw my name into probably a job that's too senior for me, but sometimes I get an interview and I get to understand what are they actually looking for in a senior leader at that caliber. And if I get far enough in the interview, it gives me insight into the salary ranges I should be negotiating in the future. So for me, you know, maybe don't overdo it, but it definitely doesn't hurt. Yeah.
Gia, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much, yeah, when you guys put it right there. Yeah.
Great. It is 7 o'clock. I don't see any other questions. I could continue this conversation the whole evening, but I am going to respect your time. Are there any parting words you'd like to leave our audience with? Anything that you'd like to just, you know, maybe drive a point home?
I think a lot of this is like being confident in your own skills and yourself and being able to advocate for yourself. So, you know, you can do it. It's going to be okay. You're going to find a position. It might not be the one that you thought or dreamt of initially, but you know, if you really set your mind to it, you can get it. And yeah. And remember to take care of yourself, as you guys mentioned earlier, like get exercise, drink water, sleep. Like, that's very important.
Gia, anything?
Yeah, I will leave you with this message. I got when I was just at the end of my master's degree, I got so many people telling me that it was impossible for me to find a job because I had 2 master's degrees and I was going to go to the industry. You're not going to find a job in your profession. You're not going to have you will have to end up settle for a job that is not really related to your career. Honestly, that was so far away from the truth. The reality, it's different. All the 2 jobs that I had so far have been completely related to my profession, my career. They have helped me way more than my 2 master's degrees. Like I have learned so much in these 8 years than whatever I learned during all the academia years that I was studying at the universities. So if I get that advice that people were telling me that I was not gonna get a job and I better do my PhD and continue at the university, I will have never learned so many things that I learned and get so much better as a professional. So sometimes don't listen when people tell you cannot do it and it's too difficult to try. No, if you do have a plan, if you really have a goal and you get organized and prepare yourself and be confident that you can do it, if that's what you want to do, go for it. Don't be scared. Don't be ashamed to try. Don't.
Yeah, I love that Nike motto, just do it. Just right. And if you fail, you just get to try again.
You stand up again and you continue.
And you do it.
Right.
Jeff.
So I'll say maybe for recent grads, for students, and maybe someone earlier in the career, one of the tips or advice I'll give is that, help me as the hiring person understand, you might not have done this job before, but what have you done in the past, whether it's volunteering or at this university or a summer job that leverages the skills that you'll need to use in this job, and help me understand, it's not so much about what you did, it's about what were the skills you used and what were the results you got. And, so that you can paint the picture for me of, oh, you can translate those skills into the job I'm hiring for. And to give a personal example, when I applied for my marketing internship at GSK in the, so pharmaceutical marketing, I came from a science background and I had never taken a marketing course or even a business course, actually, not in undergrad, not in my master's program, and not even in high school. So I had zero business or marketing experience. But for me, I understand at its core what marketing was about. It's about, influencing people to change their behavior to make a buying decision. And it was at a pharmaceutical company and I knew science pretty well. So I felt that I would be the right guy to have those conversations with healthcare professionals, which are also trained in the sciences. And I guess it worked out. Luckily for me, it worked out okay.
That's right. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to our audience for staying connected and listening into the experiences and the stories that Gia, Jeff, and Caitlin shared with us. I think a couple of things I heard quite often throughout the conversation was, being flexible, being open-minded, and just going for it. Failure is okay as long as you learn and you just move on. I loved what you said, Jeff, around, yes, I didn't get many jobs, but no one knows that except for myself. It's so true. I never thought of that. The resume only tells the success story, right?
Yep, survivorship bias.
It's great. And barriers are just that. They're just barriers. You just have to organize and put a plan together to overcome those barriers. I do thank you very much for taking the time and spending this hour with us. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with other events. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day, and just do it, just go for it.
Exactly.
Thank
Thanks for
you,
having
Giselle.
us.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bye.